right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of our podcast. And I am really privileged today to be joined by a real resource and expert in the 401k space, Rickie Taylor. Rickie Taylor is a regional director with Retirement Plan Consultants serving the entire Eastern Seaboard. Is that right, Rickie?
Yeah, absolutely. From Maine all the way down to Florida.
From Maine to Florida, providing expertise and quality information, helping business owners getting plans, 401k plans, other types of retirement plans set up. And Rickie's been doing this for quite a while. He's been in this role since 2016. He has been awarded with a really awesome award from Investment News, the See It, Be It Role Model Award. And Rickie's on the Philadelphia board of the Philadelphia Securities Association, the Financial Planning Association of New Jersey, and the Association of African American Financial Advisors. Did I get everything, Rickie?
You did. And now I will
Okay.
tell you, Jake, you missed one that's
Okay.
not actually on my bio. The Association of Wholesaling Diversity. I just won the Networking Icon Award, which is absolutely fantastic. There's over 500 members in this particular group. So to be recognized as one of the best networkers, it means a lot.
Oh, I believe it because one of the things I was going to say, I'm just excited for this episode because um, every time we get together and work with folks to help them answer some questions about retirement plans, you bring this awesome energy to the table and super energized and excited about retirement plans. I can't help but be excited myself. How do you get this fantastic energy every day, Rickie?
Jake, I got to tell you, I'm blessed to be here, and I just try to control what I can control. All right. And if it's not in my control, I'm going to try not to worry about it. Much easier said than done, but I just have a positive outlook on what I do and how I get business done.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I think we shared that. Focus on what we can control. Something we talk about a lot. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast, and we can always find something positive in just about any situation, and if we can focus on that and focus on what we can control, we can work more effectively towards positive outcomes. So I think you helped me get the really positive energy going. So I'm excited for this and so what we're going to be talking about today, really wanted to dive into um, 401ks broadly as a topic, but really specifically wanted to talk about kind of how to start a 401k. And this is a question that we encounter pretty frequently with folks, in particular small business owners and sole proprietors who have kind of gotten to a point a lot of times where want to explore options for retirement savings through the business, either for themselves or for their employees. And so, in those situations, a lot of times, Rickie, you're the first person we're on the phone with to try to have a really productive conversation around what the options are. And there are a lot of options out there. So, wanted to kind of limit what we're talking about today to just a 401k plan. So my first question for you is, what is a 401k?
Yeah, Jake, I think that's probably the best question to start out with.
Right.
And I'll try to sum it up. A 401k is a qualified employer plan, whereby a business needs to, it has to be a business operating a 401k plan governed by the IRS and Department of Labor. But when you think about it, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper on this, granted, it is a contribution savings and investment tool. But when you look at it from the business's perspective or the business owner, it's a tool to attract and retain quality talent. Okay. So even though it's an investment vehicle, you're using it for so much more than just throwing in contributions, getting earnings through the investments and things like that. So again, just summing it up, a great investment tool that's used to attract and retain talent.
I really like the way that you went about that definition because um, I think a lot of times when we're talking about 401k plans, and we could even be talking with folks about other types of retirement savings, but a lot of times we're just kind of looking at kind of the technical nuts and bolts. But sometimes it's really helpful to kind of zoom out a little bit and talk about, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? And then with what we're trying to accomplish, how does this tool help to facilitate that? So here we're talking about it's a great tool for putting retirement savings contributions in and putting that money to work, investing those dollars. But then also, to your point, it's a fantastic benefit to offer employees, and is something to attract and retain talent. And what do you see like in terms of kind of rank order? What would you usually say is the priority for most of the folks that you're working with? Is it kind of split evenly, or are most folks coming to the table to start a new plan saying, I really want this as a benefit? Or are they coming to you and saying, I'm the owner and I really want to sock away as much money as I can?
Yeah, and it's a combination of all of that, Jake. So depending on where the business owner is in their business, if they're just getting started, a lot of times they don't have the employees that they need to worry about. So it becomes more of how can I save more money for myself to build a nice retirement nest egg? How can I create something to save money on taxes? Okay, because when you think about a qualified plan, it's a great tax savings vehicle. Okay.
Mhm.
So I would say the priority is business owner first, tax savings, and then once they start to build their employment base, it's now how can we take care of our employees? Okay.
Mhm.
So that's going to be the priority there.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, maybe kind of maybe a simple question to answer. Like, for a business owner that's considering starting a 401k plan for some of the reasons that you're talking about, I mean, like, how many employees do you need? Like, do you need a minimum amount, or is there a maximum amount? Like, kind of what's the deal with employees?
Yeah. So I mean, a business owner, as long as it's a business, you can start a retirement plan. So if you are a one person shop, you can start a solo 401k plan. Then once you have at least one employee who is not your business partner or your spouse, then you got to switch over to the traditional side. But
Mhm.
yeah, answering your question, if you are a one person shop, you can do a plan. If you have thousands of employees, you can start a plan. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the first step would be having a conversation with, you guys as the financial advisors, the certified financial planners, having that conversation to kind of understand what the options are, meaning, do we go with a simple IRA? Do we go with a SEP IRA? Do we go with a 401k? And then you guys wrote me back into it to kind of, you know, clarify everything, if you will.
Yeah. And like, I think the discovery process, that's a, for me at least, it's a really exciting part of kind of this journey, in kind of figuring out, okay, what are the priorities, and for the business owner, and kind of what's the best fit, what's the tool for the job. And the 401k, it's just really interesting because, like you're pointing out, I mean, if you're just a sole proprietor, you have this fantastic tool, the solo 401k. It's a 401k for a sole proprietor, for a sole business owner. And I think a lot of times there's just kind of this air of kind of, I don't know, mystique around the 401k. Like, this is something for big companies. Do you see that? Like, folks kind of surprised at like how small a business can really be to get a 401k going?
Absolutely, Jake. And, I had a conversation with someone I was golfing with, and the gentleman made a comment about a Roth IRA and how, he couldn't put X dollars amount in a Roth IRA. And I overheard this and I simply said, well, have you thought about adding a Roth component to your 401k plan? And he said, well,
Yes.
what do you mean? I said, well, you can put up to the deferral maximum, which is 22,500. And he said, no, you can't. I said, no, you actually can. And Jake, when I tell you, he literally argued with me for
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 minutes until I just got frustrated. And I said, well, wait a minute. Do you have a financial advisor? Jake, the gentleman told me he had three financial advisors. I said, oh my God, you have three financial advisors and nobody told you this? So, needless to say, I was right. Okay. I was able to show
And
him,
yes, of course. Yeah.
right? I was able to show him through the documents that you can add a Roth component to your 401k plan. and defer 22,500 or 30,000 if you're over 50. And now he's like one of my best friends. Okay.
Oh,
So
for sure, for sure. I mean, and it's like, you got the info, and it's like it's like I think the argument probably that you were getting wasn't so much that it was like, you're obviously like expert in this area. It's not like an argument against that. It's kind of an argument against kind of the general stream of information and confusion that comes in for a lot of
mhm,
folks and business owners in particular, kind of not knowing kind of what these tools are really capable of and what a
right.
401k is really potentially capable of. And I know you're talking about kind of defer limits. I want to get into that and kind of some of the rules a little bit, but I'm curious at this point, like, okay, so we're talking about the 401k and kind of these benefits and this exploration process to figure out, okay, as a business owner, what am I trying to achieve? Let's say the 401k is the way we want to go. Maybe it's the route that makes sense. Um, how on earth do you start a 401k?
That is, again, you're hitting me with some great questions, Jay. So, in order to start the entire process, again, most of the time, the business owner is going to have a conversation with their financial advisor. Okay. The financial advisor is going to point out some key things. And, let's get to the part where you come to a Rickie Taylor. As a consultant, I'm going to have a thorough conversation with the financial advisor, the business owner, maybe even the CPA. Okay. Because we're all a team doing what's in the best interest for the client. So during I would call it an exploration process where we're asking the business owner, well, what do you think you want to do? What do you think this plan should do for not just you as the employer, but also as, I'm sorry, for your employees? And here's the biggest question, Jake. How much do you think you can afford to put away? Okay.
Mhm.
Because there are some finite dollar limits, but just because the limit is there doesn't mean the business can afford it. Okay. So typically, when we go through all of these questions and we uncover these answers, we're going to derive at roughly a solution. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example. If the business owner says, well, I mean, I can afford to put away $50,000 from my own pocketbook. Okay, well, we know the limit is again 22,500 if you're 49 or younger, or 30,000 if you're 50 or older. So we're not going to take anything over 30,000, but we now have
That's
an understanding of what we're playing.
and that's just like kind of interrupt there. That limit is what limit? The 22.5 or the 30?
Right. That's the 402G limit. And sorry for the IRS terminology, but the 402G limit is the deferral limit. And if I
Gotcha.
had to define what a deferral is, that's money coming from the employer's paycheck, the employee's paycheck, going from their direct paycheck into the investment
Yeah,
account. Okay.
like the payroll deduction type kind of
Exactly.
contributions.
Right. Okay. Did I finish my
So
statement?
oh, no, I kind of interrupted you because like I think the limits get confusing and like all the IRS code terminology and it's like you like clearly begin to see this is like a minefield of information. But like you're talking about the business owners, okay, how much can you afford? And you got 50K, and but here's the deferral limit.
Right.
So what else can we do to get maybe another 20K into the plan if they're over 50?
Yeah, and that's all a part of the conversation. So when I'm having this conversation and getting an understanding of affordability, okay, I can show the business owner how we can maximize their contribution and then explain what we need to do for the staff. And, typically what we're looking at for the staff is some type of safe harbor component, whether it be safe harbor match or safe harbor non elective. And the key aspect with safe harbor is providing something to the staff, the non highly compensated, so that the business owner who's considered highly compensated can fully max out what they're putting in on the deferral side and not really worry about what the staff is doing. But
Oh,
I'll tell you, I mean, I've been doing this for over 20 years, Jake, and most of the time the business owner says, hey, wait a minute, I want to make sure I'm taking care of my staff. So tell me what the minimum is that I have to give to them, and then we'll work somewhere, above that. So it's a great opportunity. Again, this is how you retain your talent, okay, by
mhm.
offering a great retirement.
It's so again, like it was talking like the exploration process is enjoyable. I think that's a really good example because, as a business owner, maybe you're coming to the table in that example like you had, and you say, okay, I can afford to put this much in, but the maximum that I can defer through payroll is less than I can actually afford to put in the plan. So how, as the business owner, can I really leverage this plan for my benefit and get even more in up to a higher limit?
Mhm.
So to do that, you kind of have some rules in. Okay, the employer is going to contribute this kind of safe harbor minimum amount for all the other participants in the plan. And but at the same time, in this kind of journey of getting a plan started, a lot of business owners, maybe in your experience, are saying, you know what? That's the minimum. I want to do more for my
Mhm.
employees and do the most for myself.
Right, right. And Jake, there are multiple components to the 401k. Again, you have the deferral, you have the safe harbor, you have the non-discretionary match, you have the discretionary profit sharing. The key aspect, again, if we look at the numbers and what the IRS allows us to do,
Mhm.
I'm going to throw a couple of numbers at you.
Okay.
For 2023, $66,000 per person is what can go into an account if you are 49 years or younger. Okay. That's 66,000 is, yes, 66 is made up of the deferral, which again is 22,500, and the rest is going to be eligible to come from the business. So that's an employer contribution, which again might consist of safe harbor, could be regular match, could be profit sharing. Okay. But the key thing is understanding again what the affordability is. Just because I can get you to 66,000, if you've got 10 employees, we're not going to get everybody to $66,000 because, again, that's a huge amount of money. Now, don't get me wrong, depending on the affordability, it could happen. I've seen a couple of law practices fully maxed out on 15 partners.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, it depends on the affordability, but having the conversation to understand exactly what you can do, that's where you and I come in. That's where the CPA comes in. Okay. Again, building the team to help the client is always going to be best.
That's I like the way you phrase it, like, figure out what you can do. Like how can we make this tool really work for your objectives? And I think in that example you just gave, it's like if you tell most people, that if you design a plan in a certain way and your company can afford it, you can get 66,000 into these plans per participant in that example under the age of 49. And that's eye opening for a
Yeah.
lot of people. And I imagine you see that in your experience as well. It's like, wow, these planes can do a lot more than I thought. And that thing is probably a good segue to like talk about like, okay, what can these plans do? What kind of flexibility can we build into plan design? Like, can you give us like some examples of different elements of plan design that you're oftentimes working with to customize for business owners?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for segueing to that, Jake, because I mean, again, all plans are different. Okay. Like for instance, the set and the simple IRAs don't have the same benefits and design components of a 401k. So, for instance, 401ks can allow for loans. 401ks can allow for arts of distributions. You can put in eligibility requirements. Okay. For instance, maybe you've got a lot of employees with high turnover. Okay. So nobody's sticking around for longer than a year. So we would implement what's called an eligibility rule of you have to be employed with the company for at least 1 year and you have to be at least 21 years old to participate. All right. So with the high turnover, that will most likely limit the amount of folks that are going to be eligible, which now means less employer contribution, which could also mean less administrative burdens, if you will. So thinking about, the eligibility requirements, things that you want to put in the plan, like the loan, like the distribution features, like I think some people are now starting to think about the self-directed brokerage account option. Okay. I mean, I have different opinions on it because when you think about the SDBA, it's more of a stock brokerage account. Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, for a retirement plan, you probably don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. So we actually try to stay away from the SDBA and go more to the mutual fund side where, there's a tremendous amount of diversity. Now, as the advisor, I'm sure you can speak to that, but you asked me about the flexibility, so I
Yeah.
had to bring it up. Okay.
Well, I think that's like a really good example. Like you're talking about these different elements of plan design that you can customize within a 401k. I think an example of a business that has high turnover, maybe you don't want the administrative responsibility of getting all your new employees onboarded into a 401k plan and then have them leave after a few months. And
Right.
so, customizing details of the plan to fit your kind of business situation, that's a huge value add and not something that you get with other types of plans that have kind of a fixed set of rules like you mentioned with say a SEP IRA or a simple IRA. And investment choices are definitely one of those elements of flexibility that we see is particularly in folks that kind of already have a plan. Maybe they have a limited set of choices in their investment menu and maybe they aren't the best. And so we also work with folks, who are kind of in a higher cost plan, maybe with poorer investment choices from our perspective, and we want to kind of change that up and maybe reduce costs for the plan and reduce costs for the investment choices. And so we kind of can go about starting a new plan from that perspective as well. What's your experience with kind of these plans? I mean, if you could describe how the investment choice menu kind of works
Yeah.
um, for most plans.
So typically, the investment choices are going to stem around mutual funds, maybe even ETFs, right? You're going to have a set menu. Like you really should not have such a robust offering. I mean, if you have over 30 funds, I think that's overkill. You know,
Mhm.
I look at how we do things. I mean, we're a 338 fiduciary, which means we're providing the investment portfolio. You guys are the investment advisors, so you're literally steering the participants on how to invest within the portfolio. So when you look at the portfolio, there are individual mutual funds through all the different asset classes. We have asset allocation models ranging from conservative to moderate to aggressive. So there's a flavor for whatever investment philosophy you have. We also utilize the target date series, which is going to essentially invest according to your age and retirement time horizon. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, again, you can look at the world of, I don't know, 25,000 different mutual funds and ETFs out there. Okay. But as a participant, again, if you have access to a ton of information, it's going to be overkill, overload, right? So we try to keep it simple by building out this process whereby, again, individual funds, asset allocation models, target date series. Now, I'll tell you, I don't know, maybe about 17 years ago, I worked for a TPA firm, and we actually had a vintage Jaguar as an asset in the plan, which I hate. And it's mind boggling, but sometimes people want to do things like that. And of course, there are firms out there who will. But here's the problem with that: you have to get an annual valuation on that particular, let's just call it an equity, okay,
Yeah.
every single year. And there's a cost to that. So you're actually spending more money than you actually need to because you have to get this item value. Okay. So let's stick with the mutual funds.
That's really interesting because, like, I think the kind of, I don't know, the grocery store example can be like a good one where, like, you go to the grocery store and you maybe have a list of things you need, but you're overwhelmed by choice. Like, you have
Mhm.
multiple choices for everything that you have on your list. And so I would imagine, probably from your perspective as well, I think in advising folks on plan design, here are all the choices. This can be overwhelming. So here's what actually kind of fits with your situation the best. And sometimes limiting choice can be a really effective solution. You don't want participants to be overwhelmed and then selecting maybe inappropriate investment choices. And you mentioned something I did want to touch on, which is the fiduciary roles for 401k plan sponsors. And well, can you tell us like a little bit about, okay, what if you're a business owner starting a 401k plan and you're taking on what kind of legal responsibilities are you taking on, or fiduciary responsibilities are you taking on if you start the plan and pick the investments that are supposed to be in the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a business owner, you are always the fiduciary. Okay. You're responsible for all the details that happen with the plan. Now, granted, you probably don't know. Okay. But because you're the business owner and you've signed off on having a plan, you are now the fiduciary. You will always be the fiduciary. But hiring folks like you and Jim, who are also fiduciaries of the investments, who then bring in a retirement plan consultants where we are written in as the investment fiduciary, right? So let's explain what that means. As the investment fiduciary, we're going to provide the investment policy statement, which specifies how we invest the funds we're selecting, and things like that. In the eyes of the Department of Labor, they simply want to understand you have a process and procedures in place for selecting and monitoring the funds to make sure these funds are prudent for this particular plan. Okay. I mean, I'm not naming any company names, but you have some record keepers who also have their own funds, and they say, well, if you're going to work with us, then you got to put our funds in your platform and things like that. And it's double dipping, if you will. Okay. So, as the fiduciary, again, you want to make sure the plan design is accurate. You want to make sure the fees are adequate, the investments are adequate. And again, the employer is always the fiduciary, but they're outsourcing that information to folks like you than us. So, why that's important? Retirement plans are being sued nowadays. Okay. There's a couple of firms out there who specifically specialize in suing retirement plans because participants are unhappy with maybe the investment performance, or maybe the fees, or maybe the actual investment choices. Okay. So, again, with us as an investment fiduciary, we're going to provide a robust array of investments that all fit what the Department of Labor is saying that we should be doing. And we've been doing it since day one. So it's a great system that we're providing to advisors like yourself, Jake, and even with Jen. So I think that kind of sums it up, but give me more. Bring it out of me.
I love it. I love it because, I think we've had some eye-opening conversations with folks over the years about, okay, here's, kind of the potential liability that we're kind of looking at here. And the last thing any business owner wants is to get sued because of this, benefit that they're trying to create. And it just that maybe the investment choices weren't really prudent in the plan. And, the fees were higher than they should be. So, yeah, I think there's some important liability that business owners should be aware of. And there are ways to kind of protect yourself as a business owner by enlisting the support of fiduciaries like yourself in that process.
And Jake, if I could just throw something else out there, I mean, I
Yeah.
know out there the folks are watching this podcast, and I know we're talking about how to start a 401k plan, but if those who are watching already have a retirement plan, this is also great information for you as well, because the retirement plan should be benchmarked every 3 to 4, maybe even 5 years. Okay. And the benchmark is going to include, again, looking at the plan design to make sure it still fits what you started in the beginning. Are the fees still sufficient? Are the investments adequate? Okay. And one of the things, you were talking about the fiduciary aspect and the investing. Years ago, I had a plan which had well over $200 million in it. Every single quarter, I needed to reconcile this plan. Guess who was selecting the investments? One person, one man at the company. He would select and direct the investments, and it was horrible. It was horrible, Jake. And I tried to explain to this gentleman many, many, many times, you don't want to operate like this. All right. You're investing in stocks and bonds and occasionally some mutual funds and money markets. And if I told you in 2015, their average return for the year was about 6%. At 2015, you'd probably freak out. Okay. And that was across the board for everybody. So again, the fiduciary aspect phenomenal. That could have been a prime opportunity for somebody to say, hey, my spouse is getting 12% and I'm only getting 6%. Something's wrong here.
They're
Okay.
fair
So,
questions. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
They're really good questions, and I think for folks, business owners that are thinking about a plan or have an existing plan. I mean, there's that kind of due diligence requirement, which is really important. And we're talking about this process to start a 401k, and it's certainly applicable to for business owners that have an existing plan. I want to explore, okay, am I doing the right things? Are my costs really where they should be? Am I giving my participants the flexibility that I really want them to have? Kind of revisiting all of those elements of plan design. But I think as one last topic, because if we're talking about starting a plan or kind of making some changes to an existing plan, cost is going to be one of the driving considerations.
Yes.
Um, what can you tell us about typical costs that we're going to encounter if we're starting a new plan?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is, there's obviously some startup costs. Okay. So you can expect to pay anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 in setup fees.
Mhm.
Then you have the annual administration fee. I'm just going to throw it out there. The annual administration should include all of your administrative tasks, compliance responsibilities, and even the 5500, which is the tax return for the plan. You're going to have participant fees. And I'm sorry, let me back up. Admin costs, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, anywhere between 1500 to 2500 a year. Okay. And then when you think about participant fees, each participant who's in the plan is going to incur a fee. Typically, it's about, I don't know, $30 to $50, something like that. Okay. And then, of course, the record keeping fee. The record keeping is really, really important because that keeps track of all of the activity within the plan from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, contributions, distributions, fees, loans. It allows for statement production. It allows for website access. So as a startup plan, you could expect, I don't know, 45 to 65 basis points on startup. And again, for the business owners out there, I know I'm throwing around some technical jargon. Let's talk about the basis point, right? A basis point, I think it's like what, 1/100th of a cent or something like that. The way I sum it up, Jake, if we're doing 65 basis points for every $1,000 that goes into the account, $6.50 is being paid for the responsibility. Okay. So I wanted to make sure we made that clear because I don't want anybody to yell at us. Like, I don't know what the heck a basis point is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, especially when you're talking about costs and you're trying to add it up in your head and kind of where do I land on this? And I know you mentioned a lot of different fees, and how in this process of the things, starting a plan, do you kind of take a look and say, okay, these are the startup costs to get the plan going, and here's kind of what you could potentially maybe saving, in terms of kind of other elements of the plan, or take a look at available tax credits for starting a plan. You kind of look at what's out there in terms of kind of offsetting the cost.
right. And with Secure 2.0, the tax credits have been really, really increased. Okay.
Mhm.
Now it's up to 100% of the startup cost, I believe up to like $5,000. So, if now I got to be honest, Jake. I mean, you didn't bring me on here to have any a fluff piece.
No
If a
flop.
if a business owner is worrying about the cost of maintaining a plan, which is a valid, thought,
Mhm.
we really want to have the conversation of, does it really make sense to have a plan? Remember, we talked about affordability in the beginning, right? Being able to afford the plan should tell you, I need a great plan. I know it's going to cost me some dollars. But again, you have the tax credits. You also have the tax deduction, the tax deductibility, which is huge. All right. So think about the tax deductibility in a sense, it's like 25% of eligible compensation, right? So I'm going to use some round numbers for this example. If your payroll is $1 million, 25% of that is $250,000, right? As long as your employer contribution, which would be your safe harbor, your matches, your profit sharing, as long as it's under $250,000, 25%, it's 100% deductible to the business. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a tax expert. This is where I got to bring in the CPA, but I know enough to know that's a tremendous tax savings. Okay. So, in the beginning, we talked about why would a business owner want to have a retirement plan? To attract and well, to have a solid contribution, to attract and retain quality talent, and the tax deduction to the business. Okay. So, I'll take it back to you.
I think it's like I like this. I heard this expression recently. It's like when in doubt, zoom out. And it's if you're listening through all these different costs and fees, and if you're in doubt, kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture. A
Mhm.
lot of times, and maybe that bigger picture answer is actually we're really concerned about affordability. So maybe this isn't the right time to start the plan. But maybe if you zoom out, what you're actually seeing is okay, the long term benefits of this plan and the deductibility, like you're talking about, maybe the credits that are there to get the startup, offset the startup cost. All of this, when you kind of take a few steps back, it's kind of like music to your ears. It's like this is a real tool that can provide a lot of advantage for us
Yeah.
as a business. So, um, well, Rickie, we're bumping up against kind of what we usually shoot for, which is about half an hour for our time, and that's kind of it from my front. We covered a lot of really good territory on the 401k plans. Is there any kind of final thought that you really wanted to get out that we didn't have a chance to cover?
Well, Jake, I think one of the key things that I want the audience to understand is, with you guys and working with you over the past few years, thoughtfulness and being thorough is key. All right. Because I think it's clear that, we understand the business owner, most of them are not financial advisors, most of them are not retirement plan experts. So taking the time to have the conversation and be thorough, I would say to anyone out there thinking of starting a plan, do not be afraid to ask questions. All right. And if you bump up against somebody who doesn't want to answer your questions, come see us because, again, we're very thorough. We love to answer questions and make sure you guys understand what's going on. Okay. It's always going to be in your best interest. So I'll leave the audience with that. Jake, thank you so much. This has been a blast. And I'm looking forward to catching up some more.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, really appreciate it. You're, as always, an expert in this area, and we really rely on your expertise to help guide folks through the process to get a new plan going, or migrate a plan that they already have. So appreciate all the insights today, Rickie. Maybe hopefully we'll have you back here again in the future. And yeah, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone.